do like a little bit of a flutter. Some would say nothing wrong with that, but it is undeniable to many anyway that there is a thing called gambling addiction. Some people apparently suffer with it quite badly, and if you are one of them, if you're trying to just enjoy, I don't know, a game of football, you might not appreciate gambling ads popping up quite frequently. I have to say, one game, well, more than one actually, they were analysed, and a gambling logo was popping up every 16 seconds. That is quite a lot, I've got to say. Where do you stand on this? Because this divides people. Some people say gambling companies shouldn't be allowed to advertise at all. Some people say free market, free society, do what you want. Where are you on it?
Well, I think gambling's an evil. I mean, I have been known to have the occasional bet myself. I once won a substantial sum of money at Ascot from a tip from Frankie Dettori, which I've never got over, but I don't imagine it would ever happen again. And I do office sweepstakes and the occasional political bet, but I actually think that gambling is an evil, and tempting people into it is disastrous, and it ruins lives on a colossal scale. And we ought to go back to where we were in the 1950s. This is one of the occasions when I really do say we should go back to the 1950s, when it was largely banned, apart from on actual racecourses, because I think it does such immense harm. People can't handle it, and they destroy their lives, and they destroy the lives of others because they do things like get themselves into incredible debt and have to sell the family home because of the disasters they cause.
So you would basically make it illegal?
Oh, I think it's. Yeah, I think it is a genuinely evil thing on its current scale, and I think there's no defence for it. The profits which it makes are shocking and unbearable to witness, and the dismal, disastrous effects it has on the individuals who get captivated by it are simply undeniable. Let's just not have it.
If you think that in the period you're talking about, gambling only took place on race courses.
No, I don't think that. Yeah. I know, but it was still
very widespread. The thing about it was it wasn't regulated in any way. It paid no tax, and it was often delivered by someone who'd break your legs if you didn't pay up. So there are attractions to having it within the legitimate system. I'm going to choose my words with care, actually, because when people may not know when they're watching, but we in the studio can't see what the adverts are when we go to a break. So I don't know if you had a gambling advert in the middle between the last segment and this one. I would make the point that advertisements assist in subsidising, effectively, free-to-air broadcasting. They make it cheaper or they make it free. And that's a good, that's a social good, and it's a good that enables free speech on our part to an audience that hopefully wants to listen to us. And all manner of legal activity is there. I myself rather like a flutter. I accept Peter's position, but Peter's position, to my mind, means that you shouldn't bet rather than none of us should be able to.
Well, it obviously means that too. I just think by having it made much more difficult to do, particularly the way in which people can basically be clicking on an electronic device and tossing money they don't have down a bottomless pit, I think that is an outrage, and it really oughtn't to be allowed to happen.
So that's a different point about how modern technology has changed.
Well, it is a different point, but it's nonetheless, it is the case. That is one of the reasons why the argument for preventing it entirely is very, very strong.
But the gap there between what you think should be done and what could happen is really quite large, because, of course, in the United States until recently, they banned many forms of online betting whilst they were legal elsewhere, and effectively they just found it didn't work. The custom found its way to the supply. If the demand is there, it will find the supply.
I don't agree. I think if you take it seriously, and if you really limit it with serious and carefully applied laws, you would save an awful lot of people from what is actually a tragedy. And it is a tragedy when it happens. You know the sort of cases I'm talking about, where people's spouses find that their husband or wife has run up such enormous debts through gambling that the family home has to be sold in secret. They don't know. This kind of thing should not be encouraged in any way. It's as dangerous in many ways as drugs, and I'm sick of it.
Well, let's put some numbers behind this, then, because apparently it's estimated that there are between 250,000 and 460,000 problem gamblers in Great Britain. Now, you know, that basically tells me that most people can gamble safely. It says here 0.5% of people in England have identified as problem gamblers. So why should people that actually, you know, quite like going to casinos or quite like, I don't know, betting on whatever, why should they have their enjoyment curtailed because a minority group struggle with it.
Because that's the price you have to pay for living in a civilised society. You sometimes have to give up pleasures which do you no harm because they're the same pleasures.
That's an argument.
Say you asked me the question, which you have to give up pleasures which don't do you any harm because those same pleasures do immense harm to others. It's just a simple
Where do you draw
bargain.
the line then? Would you ban alcohol? Because loads of people are.
No, you
alcoholic.
can't ban alcohol, but I would definitely bring back the alcohol licensing laws which were abolished in the 1980s, which seemed to me to be extremely sensible. And it was a grave mistake to get rid of them. You couldn't ban alcohol because even the Islamic Republic of Iran can't ban alcohol. You could certainly make it a lot harder.
The same sorts of figures that Michelle's talking about are the same sorts of level, I mean, approximately the same sorts of levels of people who claim that they can't control what they eat. They've got various problems about eating because they're too tempted by what the food industry has put in front of them, and they simply lack the will to control themselves. On your logic, we would be deprived of all sweet things and all savoury things because the small minority that can't control themselves need to have their needs dictate behaviour to the rest of us.
We haven't touched on food. We're talking about gambling.
I know, but
but then we're expanding it out, saying, well, where
you can
your
expand it out.
It ruins the lives of a small minority of people, therefore none of us should be able to do it.
Well, it's not a small minority of people in the case of food, as it happens, and it would seem to me that some sort of limits on the levels of sugar in food, particularly in the sugary drinks which are given out with fast food, wouldn't be at all a bad thing because of the damage they do. When someone says nanny state, I don't think, oh, that's a terrible thing. I think nannies. I'm sure Jacob Rees-Mogg would agree with me. I think nannies can be fantastic people and they do a lot of good. I think sometimes we have gone much too far in the direction of the nannyless state over the past 50 years.
The difference is that the nanny is somebody that the family asks... The fact that the family, which is the right vehicle for raising a child, I assume you agree, the family thinks that nanny is a figure that they wish to play a part in it. The state being in loco parentis of all of us as free adults is quite different, and that's the misnomer.
Well, I'd love that not to be the case, but as I said in the discussion about child benefit, my case for the reconstruction of and strengthening of the married family is one that has absolutely no chance of winning any support. So in the absence of that, how are we going to stop the misery caused by gambling on this scale? And
where does free will fit in your position on...
Well, people have it, but they're not encouraged or educated to exercise it.
And so because we are too stupid to be allowed real freedom, and therefore the state needs to intervene.
It's not the stupid...
Or ignorant, let's be fair to you, ignorant.
No, those are not the words that I use. It's a simple Burkean point. If people won't restrain themselves, then the state has to step in to restrain them. I wish they would restrain themselves. I think we should be a much more restrained society. I would long, as not just for the reconstruction of the married family, but for the reconstruction, the spreading again of the Protestant Christian religion, which used to dominate the way people behaved in this country. But these are far-fetched ideas.
If Peter had his...
regret to say...
Just make a basic utilitarian point, right? If Peter had his way and the industry was basically stamped out, one, it would go underground, and two, this study we've been referring to, I can't find the source, but I bet you it was paid for by the industry, which is at the moment being compelled to support gambling addiction. If you stamp it out, it doesn't disappear, it just goes underground.
Well, yeah. But going underground is often better. If something can only be marketed and sold by criminals, its operations are far more limited than if it can advertise every 3 seconds on television. That's the whole point of making things illegal. That's why we made cigarette advertising illegal. Because if you use the law against something which is bad, then it's effective.
Well,
and the fact that it goes underground is... all crime is caused by law.
Well, I can tell you, if it went underground, you'd lose £3.2 billion in tax take. That apparently...
Couldn't that just be why politicians don't do anything about this?
Well, yeah, that is what the gambling industry apparently paid in tax in 2021 and 2022 financial year. Lots of people here saying gambling is fine. It's the adverts that you're saying should be banned. I just completely disagree. I think each to their own, and if you've got a problem, as some of you might do, there are so many places now that you can go out and reach out to try and get some free help, and there's no shame in asking for help.